I'm John Leonard. I'm a corporate lawyer with Fairfield and Woods in Denver, Colorado. We have on our website a variety of videos that talk about where the law intersects your personal and your business life. On the personal side, this morning, for example, we did a series on wills and trusts. We just did one on intellectual property. Today, we're talking about purchasing commercial real estate with Gennaro DeSantis. And we talked in the first video about the process usually starts with a term sheet and letter of intent. Let's talk a little bit more about specific items of due diligence and specific items in the real estate contract. So the real estate contract kind of maps out the different due diligence that you're going to have in a commercial real estate purchase agreement. What types of due diligence do you find that I guess you're most concerned with, or you spend the most time with? I guess the condition of the property and.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, a couple of different areas, like, starting off with, what does the property look like? I mean, is the physical building, if there's a building there, is it in sound shape? With commercial, it's not as much, when you buy a residential house, you've got an inspector that goes in there and they're looking at every aspect of that property. With the commercial property, let's say it's an apartment building or an office building, you're looking at the overall structure. Is the building in good shape? Are the mechanicals in good shape? Is the roof in good shape? I mean, that's probably one of the bigger issues with a commercial building is the cost of a roof is a large expense. So you're looking at the outside structure. So that's kind of the physical part. You're also going to look at, are there environmental issues? So you're going to order an environmental report and have an engineer do what we call phase one, which is where they basically comb through all the public records.
And see if it was a gas station or a paint factory or something hazardous like that.
Right. Or if there was one nearby. So that's one of the other key things of those environmental reports is you're not only looking at what that property had, but they do check kind of the surrounding area where there could be underground water that brings a flume of gas from benzene from a gas station that was on the corner of that.
And so by this time, have I already put down earnest money?
Yeah.
And if I find the benzene, can I say this is no, if I'm a buyer, this is no good, please give me back my earnest money? That'd be part of what you might have in a term sheet or in the at least in the contract.
Yeah, in the term sheet and in the contract. Yeah, you'll put up $25,000 depending on what the property is. Could be $100,000, could be $300,000.
Are there rules of thumb on earnest money?
It's all kind of tied. There's no set rules of thumb, but if you're buying a $30 million building, you're probably putting $150,000 to $300,000 up. If you're buying a $2 million small retail building in Denver, you're probably putting $25,000 as your earnest.
Okay. So
but it is refundable. Almost always it's refundable through that first 30 to 60 days when you're doing that.
So we're doing the dance. We put up the earnest money. We've done the environmental. Do we look at title?
We're looking at title simultaneous with all those inspections, and that's where the attorneys come in. We'll look at the environmental report. We'll look at the title report. We'll make sure that we identify there's easements, what governs this property? What's impacted this property? What's going to limit my ability to do something with this property? Because you may be buying it to redevelop it. So you want to know what's on title that would limit that. And it could be that it's part of an association that has restrictions on what can be done with that property. You may want to redevelop it, and there may be easements that run down the middle of it.
So you look at things you can't get rid of, but from time to time you look at a title report and you can say, take that off. It doesn't belong there. Or?
We do spend a lot of time. One, we'll find that it's, the title company made a mistake. It's just just not even, doesn't that report somehow got linked to the property, but it really doesn't even impact the property. Sometimes we have to get the survey done to identify exactly what is within the property and what falls out of the property. Because, the surveyor might go out there, they'll identify that this easement runs over here, but that's outside of the property. And once we find those, we send the survey and the information to the title company, and they'll usually take it off.
Do you counsel clients on whether to get enhanced coverage like an Alta policy and get an Alta survey? And for whatever they're going to do you advise on that? Do you work with the title company? How does that all work?
We do. So as part of the purchase and sale agreement, we usually include a provision that allows us as the buyer to object to items on title or object to or make requirements on the seller. And usually in the purchase and sale agreements, the seller has the opportunity to fix that, but it's not always a requirement. And so the seller can always come back and say, no, we're not going to do anything with that issue on title. And then what'll happen is then we work with the title company to obtain endorsements. So, in those different endorsements will, depending on how much you pay for that endorsement, the title company looks at it and says, okay, for another $1,000 or another $500, we'll give you an endorsement that gives you protection over that easement that we see there, that it won't impact.
So you'll look at it and work with the title insurance company on those coverages. Let me just quickly bullet a few types of different kinds of projects. Somebody wants to buy an office building. What kind of business due diligence are you going to do? Leases and such?
Yeah, so we'll review all the leases in the property, and we'll maybe do an abstract of the leases so that we identify this is your 10 tenants and these are how much space they have. These are when their terms in, what the prices are. The client will usually do the analysis on whether that economically makes sense, but we're going to identify concerns like, is there a right of first refusal for one of these tenants to buy the building?
Purchase, yeah.
When do these leases all terminate? So we'll kind of give them an outline of, you need to be aware that, hey, this lease terminates this week and this one terminates the next year and so forth. And then we'll also identify if there's some, if the leases are not normal. Are they without getting into like different types of leases, but are these standard type leases? Do these leases, did the previous landlord, the guy you're buying from, did they do a good job? Because you don't want to walk into a lease that's just a mess, that's so tenant friendly that it's going to be a nightmare being their landlord.
Right. Well, kind of related to that, what's an estoppel certificate and why do you get them?
So the estoppel certificate will be this is a key way for you as the purchaser to understand that the lease that you're looking at is actually the lease and that the seller didn't have some kind of a side deal with that tenant that you're not aware of because it's not listed in the document. So it's a way to get a current update and identify that, yes, this is the lease, this is the terms, and the tenant is basically acknowledging it again.
So we just did office, an office complex. Does an apartment complex differ? I mean, you're still going to get estoppel certificates, maybe not.
Typically, because you have so many residents in there, you're not going to get an estoppel certificate.
But you are going to look at the leases.
We're going to look at the leases. One of the things that's nice with a residential property, with like a multifamily, you'll also get this with an office or retail, but you're going to get a rent roll. And that rent roll will kind of be that analysis of all the tenants, what they're paying each month, and if they have a term date. So you're going to get that information, but you're not going to get necessarily an estoppel unless, it's a smaller number of residential. Maybe it's a duplex. You might get an estoppel in that.
So downtown, a lot of these apartment complexes are commercial on the first floor. There's dry cleaners, a liquor store, workout studio, those types of things. Any special considerations there or not really?
There are, in those situations, you may have a bunch of residential on top. And so you're going to just treat that like a multifamily. But the downstairs, you're going to look at it as if it's an office building or a retail building, and you're going to obtain estoppel certificates from those tenants. Big one there is, how does the HOA work in that situation? You're going to want to understand how that property, how the commercial side works with the residential side, and make sure that you fully understand like how the costs of the building are allocated between the two different uses, which can get kind of complicated.
Great.
Yeah.
So we've just gone through this, a few aspects of what the contract is and how Gennaro helps on a typical office acquisition and apartment complex acquisition. But looking at the underlying title, as well as if you have leases, are those leases in default or not? He gets estoppel certificates on the offices, not necessarily on the residential, but certainly they both have roofs, and roofs cost a lot of money. We're going to make sure we help you look at the roofs and the title, but you're basically there to help enforce the issues that you've already negotiated in your term sheet or letter of intent. And then I don't want to say there's a normal process, but there is kind of a normal process of getting that through, and you've done dozens of them. So that's why it's great to get good advice from Gennaro before you buy a commercial property. Thanks for joining us today.